Updating container images in Kubernetes is not that simple. It can be a real headache. But what if there was a way to make that pain go away? That's where the story of Image Updater begins. Welcome to Argo Unpacked. This is episode number 14. I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Dan Garfield.
Hey.
Hey. And today we're hosting Jann Fischer.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
Hi, Jann.
Your video disappeared again. We checked it beforehand too. You became a green square again.
Am I again a green square?
Must be some kind of permission thing. It's so weird.
I can see myself just fine.
Yeah. I
Well,
blame Linux.
so people will remember me as the green square.
Yeah.
That's good with me. So
Yeah, that'll work. Well, that's okay.
Okay.
A lot of people just listen to the show anyway too, and I'll make facial expressions for both of us. How's that sound?
that sounds good.
So I want to mention that Jann is the one who actually started it all. He was launching the project in 2020. Correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, that
And I must say, I played with Image Updater in the last few weeks and started with the docs. And when I read the docs, it says a tool that automatically updates the container images of Kubernetes workloads that are managed by Argo CD. And I was actually thinking, normally when people build such automation tools, they're probably experience some real pain. And I was wondering, what were the challenges you faced that actually made you start with this project?
yeah, no, that's a fair thing to ask. And so back in 2020 or 2019, right? There was like Argo City was slowly becoming a thing, and people started using it. And there was another tool. There is still another tool, right? Flux. So and back then there was quite some competition between these tools, right? And Flux always they had an image updating functionality built in very early on. And in the Argo City community, like a lot of people came up with, hey, this is a rad feature in Flux, and how cool would it be if Argo City could do that too, right? Um, and for myself, it was also like I had a home lab and I used a lot of off the shelf images, right? Like Nginx, for example. And at that time, a lot of these workloads that I had in my home lab, they were updating at a very fast speed, right? So Nginx at that time they pushed out a patch release after patch release, and it was like security update here, security update there, and yeah, it was really painful to catch up on those, right? So and when I've heard that the community is also like really longing for such a feature, um, I just decided to sit down and just hack it away. So and that's probably how it all started. And I mean that was the time of COVID, right? It was a pretty good time. I had lots of time for my own, and so yeah, that's how it started. Um,
And so for people that aren't familiar with Image Updater, this is a tool that allows you to point at an Argo CD application and point at a source of Docker images and specify a pattern for when images should be updated. And if it sees a new image, it will go and update the application manifest, or you can enable Git write back and it will go and update Git and then allow it to sync from there. And so this is a really easy way to get application updates from containers into your manifests. And I think the home lab use case is a great one because that's where I started using it, Jann, but it's because I had an Argo CD, running my home lab, my Kubernetes, and I was like, geez, I want to get these all these updates all the time with new images, and I'm going through and updating, versions. And a lot of people in a home lab will just run latest. And of course, there's a really big problem with running the latest tag, which is
definitely.
Once it updates, if something's wrong, you can't just roll back because
Right.
you don't have a state to roll back to. It was just, I don't even know what version it was running before. So you have to go and look up a version and then update it manually that way. So yeah, this is we've recommended to a bunch of people to use Argo CD Image Updater. We've helped, within the Argo maintainers and Pasha from the Octopus team has helped do releases for Image Updater and get bug fixes in and stuff like that. So it's not a project that we necessarily officially support as Octopus, but it is a project that we have spent some time on, and we do have a number of customers using it because it's a great way to get their images up to date. So I think one of the questions that somebody had as we were getting ready to promote this episode, and maybe this will be a good point for us to jump off discussion, they said, why would I need Image Updater if I now have Argo CD supporting OCI? I can just use a wildcard and get the OCI objects. And I can think of several problems with that, but let's maybe Jann give you a chance to answer that one first.
Well, yeah, no, I mean that's a fair question too, and I mean if you think about Helm charts, for example, right?
Yeah.
You could also like just follow a Helm chart, right? Like the patch version or minor version of a Helm chart. Same goes for the OCI, but I mean there's a lot more to this, right? I mean when you think about how Image Updater started out, very simple, right? At the start, it didn't have any of this Git write back functionality or any of those fancy update paths, right? So it would support semantic versioning, right? You could give it a semantic versioning pattern and just follow that. And
Yeah.
I think that is basically what equal to what OCI or Helm would provide you today, right? So you would basically tell it to just follow a certain pattern, and that's good enough for off-the-shelf stuff, I would say, right? If you're just interested in having the latest version of Nginx, but then think about when you're building software, right? When you're developing software, you have a development environment. And you want your latest build there, right? So, and it might not be semantic version. So, I mean, it'll probably have kind of a Git revision as a tag or something like that. And that's like where we work to, to make things a bit more useful in that regard. So what Image Updater can do for you, it can go to your registry, and it can find out which is the latest build, right? Like not the latest tag, but like the latest build, like the one that you just build and push to the registry, and it can deploy that, right? So basically, you can have for every Git commit that you make to your application repository, if you have an image built into that CI, then you'd be instantly able to see the results, right? That's
Yeah.
another thing that Image Updater brings to you. Like,
well, and it also is specific and targeted to an image, right? And
yeah,
in the case of OCI or using an OCI registry as a source of truth, the expectation of using an OCI as a source of truth instead of Git is that it contains manifests which reference an image. And so
right.
those manifests have to be generated somehow. So you need to have some system that is going and updating those OCI bundles and pushing new ones in order for Argo CD even to obtain them. So already we're saying, hey, this is actually a totally different process because I've got to render these things and commit them. I'm probably using a CI process to do that. Which in this case, if I'm using Image Updater, I don't even need that because I'm just updating the image. I'm not updating all the manifests. I'm just updating the image in the manifests. And it also is just like you said, you could do that with Helm today, but both of those have the same problem of using the latest tag. If I'm pointed at a semantic version, I'm following a major version.
Right.
There's an issue. I got to do a rollback. Oh, which version do I roll back to? Well, I guess I got to go look and see what version was previously there. But as far as just doing a Git, I prefer that if I need to do a rollback, that I just do a Git revert. I would much rather just pull out the commit that updated the image because maybe there was also configuration change that went along with it, right? Maybe there was whatever other things that went along with it. And if I only roll back the image, I don't I don't know if I actually included everything. And it also is the issue of when I'm pointing at my images in my manifests, I could point that at a floating tag and continually update that tag. But again, I can't roll it back. I don't even use, I mean, when I actually go and deploy stuff with Kubernetes, I try not to even use the tags. I try to use the SHAs. Right? Because the SHA tells me that I'm going to get the same image every time. And that you can't push a new image to a SHA, but you can to a tag. So a tag is inherently mutable. And so I would prefer not to use those anyway. I want to use the SHA.
Yeah, and you also you touched a good point there, because I think so the difference is also, when you use OCI or you use Helm, you lose some of this audit trail, right? Like, I mean, I can definitely see the use case, people wanting to deploy from OCI or want to use a Helm chart instead of doing it in Git, right? But after all, like, we're talking GitOps, right? Like, and one of the sweet things, the beauty of GitOps is really that you have all this audit trail in Git.
Yeah.
With all the bells and whistles that come with it, right? So
where I like OCI as source of truth is when I need to be able to do signing on an object. I need to be able to do signature verification on a package. You can do that with OCI. Where I need distribution. So let's say that I have 200,000 different nodes that need to be updated, or locations that need to be updated. If I use OCI and I've got like some sort of distributed packaging system, like an Artifactory or something else, then it can do replication. Whereas if I'm using Git, I now have 200,000 different places going and trying to pull it from a single Git repository. And you can get around that with like maybe a Git proxy, which I think we actually don't like. I think GitLab supports it, but I think Argo CD doesn't support it 100%. So OCI makes a lot of sense for some scale issues, for some security issues, potentially. But if we're just talking like, hey, I want to keep my images up to date, that's actually solving a different problem for me. And the fact that I can get a Git commit out of it means that, yeah, I have that audit trail. I can go back and I can do a Git revert if I need to, and I can see exactly what changed. And if I needed to, revise things that way, I have all that. And if I need to recreate what was deployed, if my system got deleted, and it took me 3 hours, I'm now going to go and rebootstrap it. I can point at Git and I can get it back. But if you have different, bundles, OCI objects pointing or whatever, you then would have to go and look at the timestamps of all those things and make sure that none of them were updated while you were offline if you actually want to get back to your original state. And maybe you don't care, you're gonna jump forward. But like, I can get that verisimilitude with Git so easily compared to anything else. It makes so much more sense to me to have that be the default path.
I totally agree there.
Well, whoever asked that question on social media, I hope we answered it for you. What were you going to say, Robitel?
I was actually, I'm thinking about that green square, and I'm wondering if maybe we can just try to fix it. I'm thinking about the shorts that I want to create later on, and I want to show green screen. And I'm looking, if we just can give it a try. One reason of this problem could be that the browser doesn't give permissions to StreamYard. So maybe, Jann, you can check your settings if it will take you a few seconds. If not, then let's just forget about it.
It says the camera is on. I mean, I can see myself.
But maybe the browser doesn't have permissions to StreamYard. It doesn't let StreamYard like use your video. That's according to ChatGPT, at least.
Let me check.
And maybe then while he is checking, I can ask a basic question that I have, because you guys were talking about the write back methods. Let's see if we can. Yes.
Oh yeah, we see you now.
Hello.
Oh
So
my God. I am so happy. Okay. I'm
good.
glad it worked.
Thanks for that.
So you guys mentioned the write back mechanisms, and I'm wondering for those newbies that are maybe listening to us, maybe you can talk a little bit about both of the methods, about the Git versus the Argo CD API, and then you can mention when will I use one over the other. For me, it's very intuitive. I don't want to go and write directly in. I want to be able to change my repo and then everything will just flows. I don't want to change stuff in my deployment, but there's got to be a reason for that configuration to exist, right? So I'm wondering, what are the motivation behind those two write back mechanisms?
So you were talking about the Argo CD and the Git writeback.
Yes.
Yeah. So the history behind this is, so when we started the project back in the days, right? Git writeback was not in the first iterations of the tool. So actually, the first iteration was an Argo CD API client, right? You needed an Argo CD API token actually to have to make it work. It did not talk to Kubernetes directly. You needed to create a user in Argo CD for that with the right permissions, create the token, give that token to Argo CD image updater, and it would basically run in a loop, go to your registry, figure out if there's something new, and talk to Argo CD to update application parameters, right? So that was basically the first iteration of what we shipped. And obviously that, I mean, it was a good proof of concept at the time, right? It was like, I wasn't even sure after the first one or two iterations if it will ever leave the proof of concept status. But yeah, people picked it up, and like how community do things, right? They came, tried it out, said, "Wow, that's great," and it would be even greater if it could do this, and if it could do that, and like how open source works. And so one of the first things that people were saying is, well, this is complicated, right? Like I have to create an Argo CD user, I have to, all these things, all these hoops I have to go through.
And if I want to do it declaratively, now I have to do all of these in a 10 times
right
way.
Yeah, and that was a totally valid and fair ask. And so we came up with, now we're talking directly to Kubernetes, right? And updating an application spec using the Kubernetes client instead of going through the Argo CD API. And then obviously people said, well, we're doing GitOps, but this is only like an imperative change to an application spec. So back at the day, we thought, like, how could we make that work? And I know I had some very constructive discussions with Alex Matthew-Shantzeff back in the days, like how could we get Argo CD to update those application parameters from Git? And so we came up with that solution, right? And yeah, that's basically how it's evolved. And I think the original Argo CD update mechanism is something that not many people will use today. It's basically its legacy, right? So I mean, it's probably good for quick, if you're self doing a proof of concept, right? If Argo CD image updater would be something for you, you don't have to give it write access to your Git repository and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think like that's the default for everybody when they first start using Argo CD is they go to the UI, they click new app, they start doing stuff, and they really like it. It's really easy. And one of the reasons that Argo CD is so popular is because it's so flexible. You can do stuff the right way and you can do stuff the easy way. And sometimes they're not the same way. But the point about like image updater, when I first deployed it, I didn't give it a Git token. It's like, let's see how this thing works. And then
Right.
once I was ready to do real operation, I was like, okay, here's Git token. Let's do this the right way. And it's the exact same with Argo CD. You play with the UI, you create apps, and then you learn pretty quickly, I basically should never do that. I should only be creating the apps in Git or using an application set so they're generated automatically, because you end up with this meta state that sits on the cluster. And if you lose the cluster, you lose your configuration. You might have the manifests sitting in Git for your application, but you don't have any of the manifests that describe how those manifests are supposed to be deployed. So now you're in trouble. So I talked to so many people who they're like, oh yeah, first thing we do once we deploy Argo CD, we disable the ability for anybody to create an application in the UI because we want to do it in Git. So that's super common and makes perfect sense. With image updater, we talked about the comparison with OCI, and I think that's kind of the wrong comparison. I mean, I get why people would ask that question because they're kind of solving different problems, and an image updater has the get right back, and I get to be able to do my rollbacks and all that stuff. I think the better comparison would be like Renovate. And so as Renovate has gotten more popular, of course, I can use Renovate to update my application packages and stuff like that, but I can also use it to update my image tags from a Docker registry. So have you seen more pressure on image updater from tools like Renovate? And do you have any opinion about why a person would choose one over the other?
So I like the beauty of the image updater in the context of Argo CD is that it's so well integrated, right? Mm-hmm. So you can have the same Git source for different applications, right? So you could basically have the same manifests in your Git at one path in Git, and you basically spawn 3 applications, one for dev, one for stage, one for prod, and they're supposed to use different image tags, right? They use maybe the same set of manifests, but like different image tags. And with image updater, you update those image tags or like the images to be used per application, right? And not per repository. So you could basically have in your Git repository for all these 3 applications, you could have 3 separate image updater source parameter files.
Yeah,
right?
policies of which tag
Yeah.
they're trying to match to, which major versions, minor versions, patch versions, whatever.
So I must admit, I don't know too much about Renovate, except that it exists and is widely popular with people, and that its scope is much broader than image updater, right?
Yeah. What's interesting, I think, about this is that Renovate tends to be used by application, engineers, because they're updating like the packages that are being built with like NPM or Go or whatever. And then they were kind of like, well, I can look in a repository and look at Kubernetes YAML, look for images and update those based on a Docker registry change. So that makes sense. But that difference that you brought up of in the application world, when you were to work on different versions, you typically are working on a different branch, right? You have a stable branch, a beta branch, whatever. And that makes perfect sense within the application world because you're promoting these things always in sequence from beta to production, and you're not carrying over. You don't care about carrying over the values across those branches. But Argo CD is totally different. Kubernetes operations is totally different because you don't use long-running branches for environments, like a stable versus a beta versus like a staging branch or something like that. And you don't do that because when you are promoting changes from staging to production, you have long-running value differences that are supposed to stay intact and isolated to those environments. And so if you try to promote from staging to production across a branch, you now have to do this really hairy cherry pick, crazy differential where you're trying to figure out which values are supposed to come and which ones aren't. So that's one of the reasons
people do that anyway, though. Right?
Oh, people do it. Yeah, people do it. No, we recommend that you don't do it. We have this whole popular blog post called Folders versus Branches. Stop using branches for environments. And the best practice is to use folders like you've described. And so if I'm using Image Updater, it's really easy for me to create a policy around which applications get which versions of which images, and it's fine. Whereas the default with Renovate would be just update all those images, and of course that would be breaking. And I think you can in Renovate actually specify, you can do additional configuration to do specific paths, get different things and whatever. But I haven't tested that in Renovate, but maybe somebody from the audience will tell us that there's a brilliant way to do it with that. But Image Updater is so well tuned to this, and it's already speaking the language of Argo, and it's going to update in the manifests the way that I expect it to. So nice and convenient, and get right back and all that stuff. Like it's designed for this, so it's very fit to function. Another point that people are going to ask probably is, how does this work with application sets?
With application set, I think it works just fine if you use Git writeback, right? I know that a lot of people struggle with integrating Image Updater and application set when they use the Argo CD method, because the Argo CD update method would manipulate the spec of the application, right? And an application set would modify the spec of the application as well. So they would override each other, right? So
yeah. As soon as you updated it with Image Updater without Git writeback,
yes,
then the application set would like go regenerate, and it would go overwrite your change.
Yeah. So, but other than that, like I think it works just fine if you use Git writeback. So, it's a good match actually.
The requirement would be that we make sure that the manifests that contain the images with those are sitting in Git. And sometimes people you could technically with an application set, you could fill that value using the application set rather than pulling it from Git. But it's like using a parameter override or something like that with like a Helm chart. But it would be like a bad idea. we would just tell you not to do that. It'd be better to keep it correct in Git and not use parameter overrides like that, which is another common bad practice that we see, and one of the anti-patterns covered in Costas's latest blog. If you go to codefresh.io/blog, there's a blog post entitled "Top 30 Argo CD Anti-Patterns to Avoid When Adopting GitOps," and the abuse of parameter overrides is one of those.
Are there actually 30 anti-patterns that you came up with?
Yeah. There's 30 in this blog post. And I think that as every day we discover more, I'm always, as I sit and I work with somebody on like they're having an issue with Argo, we'll go and look at their configuration and their cluster.
Yeah.
And even after all these years, I've seen thousands, right? I mean, we work with probably more Argo end users than anybody else as a vendor. Octopus does, and have been doing it longer than anybody else. I don't know. Red Hat's pretty close now that I think about it, Jann. I think you guys have been doing it for a long time too. You guys were right neck and neck with us on the project, so maybe I'm speaking too much out of school. But anyway, after all these years, I still will on the weekly see something where I'm like, "Huh, why are you doing that? Like, what's that about?" And
yeah, I mean, you mentioned it previously. Like, there's so many things so many ways how you actually can do things, right? And people will go these ways. So I think there's, if at all, I mean, it's not the fault of the people. It's probably more there's too little guidance, right, in how to make things the proper way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something if I think about Argo CD as a project, I think that's something that we struggled with since the beginning, right? I mean, we have documentation, right? And most things, well, let's say fairly documented, right? But there is really not too much do's and don'ts in there that people could attach to that would give them the right direction. Yeah.
This is a big debate because Argo CD is the de facto, right? It's 60% of Kubernetes clusters are using Argo CD today, and number 2 is at like 8%. So it's the de facto way to do Kubernetes. And part of the reason it's so popular is because it's so flexible. You know, it's really, you can do all kinds of interesting things with Argo to fit your situation. But when it comes to best practices, we kind of recommend you don't do a lot of the things that you could do. And I think, Jann, you'll agree with me because you've done issue triage with me many times where we sit and look through the Argo CD issues on the community repo. You've dealt with a lot of customer issues. I get tickets all the time for Argo support for our stuff. And almost to a T, it's probably 90% of bugs that are reported are configuration issues. And probably 98% or 95% of bugs that are reported, if it's not just a configuration issue, it could be solved with the configuration change. Because
oftentimes it's true,
yeah, maybe there is a bug where if you set up these really kind of esoteric, bizarre combination of configuration, that this edge case can occur, but we could probably solve it by just having like a more, best practices kind of approach to that configuration. And Image Updater is so nice for us to recommend because it's pass through, right? It's just updated. It's watching Docker, it's updating Git, and it's letting Argo CD do its thing. So like, I don't have any concerns about it. So nice that way.
It does still have the disclaimer on it, right? In the documentation that it's not really recommended for production use. Probably since the beginning. I mean, it's more than 5 years now, right? And the reason behind this is we do expect a major breaking change in the future, right? So I know that a lot of people are using Image Updater in production, right? And it's just working, but it's still at 0. I don't know what the current version number is actually.
It's 0.16.0.
Yeah, and so behind the scenes, so I gave up the maintainership of the project, right? I just, and I talked to Revital previously before we went live. So at some point in time, for me, it was just impossible to juggle Image Updater, which is basically it has been my pet project, right? With all the other things that I had to do. And the project almost died, right? I mean, I can remember the times where like issues were stacking up, pull requests were coming in, people in Slack reaching out, asking for help. And I just couldn't, I just couldn't be of any help at all to them, right? So, and nobody really, wanted to step up. Maybe I made it difficult too because I basically disappeared, right? But yeah, like I was very happy that that Pasha stepped up, right?
Yeah.
And also my colleague Cheng.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Cheng's been quite active as well.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job in really revitalizing the project, right? He dived in and he went after all the most recent issues and brought some PRs that were sitting for months, right? He brought them to merge and worked with the community and pushed out a couple of new releases. And he and a couple of other folks are working behind the scenes right now to bring that breaking change that we expect before the V1 out into the wild, basically.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I didn't know what I have no idea what the breaking change is that's planned. So what's the plan there?
So like one of the most requested features for Image Updater would be support for pull requests, right? And I thought a long time
commit. instead of making a direct commit when you do the get right back.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So
in a new branch, open a pull request.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's the flow that people work with. If we talk about governance and all these kind of things, right? Basically, you really shouldn't push directly to Git and assume it will work, right? So,
Yep.
Especially if we're talking about production, and so pull request has been a widely requested feature, and I was always thinking how we can make that work, because right now, with the way we configure image updater using annotations, right, on the application spec itself, we have no means to save state, right? So if you update the Git repository that Argo CD uses to render the application, right? Let's assume you make a commit that says, give me a new image. And Argo CD hasn't synced yet, right? Maybe you have a manual sync policy. Maybe you have a really long reconciliation time frame that will look into Git every hour or so. Then you will always have this gap, right? You have the commit in Git. And Argo CD image updater will only know what version is currently running by looking at the application spec. So, and the application spec isn't yet updated. And if you think about pull request, now what happens if image updater, it thinks there's the version 1 running, and it finds the version 2 in the registry, and it submits a pull request for updating to version 2. And then the next time it looks at the application, there's still version 1 running, and it goes to the registry, and it will find version 2 and submit another pull request, right?
Yeah.
And so on, and so on, and so on. So, and for that, to solve that, we need state. So we need to keep track. Did I submit a PR already, right, for that particular version? So the breaking change that's about to come is that we want to introduce a custom resource definition, a CRD, for configuring the image updates. We have to see how breaking this actually will be, if we will support both methods of configuration, right? Or if we say like, okay, let's scrap the annotations for good. Because they are very simple, right? You just put those annotations on the application and off you go. But there is much room for error, right? So there's no validation on the annotations and whatsoever. So yeah, that's basically the big change that we need to make happen before we say, okay, we can put out a V1, which is then a promise in itself to not make any more breaking changes until a V2, right? So,
well, that's oh, go ahead, Revita.
So I just have a question about the process itself. I know that from Argo CD major version 3.0, Reggie was really the release manager, and on top of it, and the process was to basically go through the community and collaborate and gather a lot of feedback, and then address that in a bunch of meetings and approval for those breaking changes. How does it actually go with the image updater? Is it the same process? How do you announce about a breaking change, and how do you work with the community to basically deal with this breaking change?
That's a good question, and I guess we don't have a good process for that in the image updater project yet. That's why we are not at a V1.0, right? That we're still 0.16 or something. And if you think about semantic versioning, right, it says pre-version 1.0, users have to expect breaking changes, right? Mm-hmm. So that's also what we point out in the documentation. Yeah. Obviously, there have been quite a few breaking changes in the past, and what we try to do is we communicate them in the release notes and telling people, hey, here's a breaking change you need to be aware of, right? But it's basically only that. It's just notification that a breaking change is being done, right?
And when is that expected? When is the version expected to be out for release? And of course, how can the community help and support you guys?
So about the date, I'm not 100% sure, because I'm not the one tackling this particular challenge, right? That's more Chang is driving all of that, so we probably have to ask him. But the community can help with like with everything, right? Like they can look at the issues that exist. They can come up with their ideas. If, for example, if we're talking about the CRT structure, right? I think everybody would appreciate if more eyes come to those discussions and just point to things that may not work or point to things that are missing that could make it work better. Obviously, people can contribute code, right? So that's much appreciated. Participate, like everything you can imagine as a contribution, we definitely appreciate. So,
well, I'm excited for this new version to come out, and hopefully you'll get a lot of people helping contribute to it, because creating pull requests is actually a lot more complex than commits. I know we're all developers, we've all created pull requests before, but from an API perspective, a pull request and a merge request, the thing is, Git commits are generic to Git. So I can just run a Git commit, man. I don't care who my Git provider is. But once I go to a pull request, I now have to deal with the APIs of GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, everybody else. And so on that front, how far are you in the work of creating the pull request? I assume you're targeting GitHub first, probably. And then maybe it's stubbed out so people can add support for other providers.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure about the roadmap for that, but I would assume that GitHub, GitLab, probably these are the two major platforms that we're targeting to support from the beginning. Bitbucket would be probably the next. And then you got to see, right? Yeah, then we are like basically pretty much dependent on community contributions for other platforms that also support pull merge requests. So
it would be nice if the providers themselves actually got a little bit more involved. I know that GitLab has some users that they recommend use Argo CD that's part of their platform. It'd be cool if GitLab wanted to maybe contribute that. So hey, let's put that call out there. GitLab, come on, get off your butts. John's trying to help you get more deployments happening using your platform. Let's contribute a little bit.
I wish that would be standardized, right? I mean, it's the same for the image registries, right? Like obviously you access the image registries using a standardized API, right? The container registry itself. But then all these providers, they have like their very own REST APIs around it, right? I mean, if like we talked previously about the latest build, right? Which is in reality, so it's the latest build, but not the latest push. So you from the registries, from the standardized registry API, you get the build date, which is a problem in things like oh man, I forgot the word. The reproducible build, sorry, because they set the build date to Unix epoch 0, right, which is 1970. So just that the SHA will always be the same when you build from the same source. And the push date, actually, when you push that image to the registry, that is proprietary to every image registry out there, right? So they have all their own REST APIs, all the different ways to authenticate, and so that's why we didn't pursue getting the push date, because lots of people using reproducible builds, they complained like, well, it really should get this image, but it gets this one, and they assumed it's the latest push, right? But it's in reality it's the latest build. So
okay. Yeah, that's tricky. And it's just those things that are limited because of the number of different permutations you have to support the different providers.
Yeah.
And they're always updating their API, and who's going to test that and who's going to maintain it. And if there's not a dedicated volunteer in the community who uses this every day, I sometimes will review like pull requests that are updating like in Argo CD, Azure SSO integration stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I don't use Azure SSO integration. So if I'm looking at that pull request, I'm like, okay, like I can see it's not doing anything nonsensical. Like it's not, leaking secrets or data or something somewhere. But, I really rely on somebody in the community that's using that to validate it and say, hey, this is working. This is the fix.
And it's also like it's a problem, right, that we see in the image updater too, like with the authentication mechanisms for AWS, for example, or for Azure, right?
Yeah.
So for an open source maintainer, it's like these are commercial platforms, right? They have like, it's not as easy as creating a GitHub account or GitLab account, right? For Azure or AWS, you need at least to provide a credit card for them to get an account, right? And then if you access like the registry, it may cost money, right? So and that makes it really difficult to integrate these kind of providers and APIs in open source projects. If as you mentioned, like if you don't have someone who's dedicated to that, right? So
yeah, exactly. Man, this is, I think people should feel confident. I know that like the changes that we have, like that is a breaking change potentially, but it's still a bit of a ways out. I wouldn't say anybody should like stall in their adoption. I think people could be using this tool today, and when that functionality is there and you want to upgrade to it, you may have to do some updated configuration, but it's so valuable to use anyway that I would say it's not worth waiting to start using it.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, like, the disclaimer is also there because, I, as a person who had image updater as his pet project, right? I didn't want to be responsible for production grade support, right? So that was obviously one of the reasons too that this disclaimer is there. So yeah, but I agree with you. Like, I mean, I've seen people using it in production with great success. Yeah, I mean, there is a couple of bugs. It's software. Every software has bugs, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Chang took over. A couple of community people also contributing, fixing bugs. So the project is not dead. It's more live than ever.
Yeah, and I think like its status for me, we'll use it with GitOps promotions from CodeFresh, and in that case, it's perfect because I don't actually need it to have access to my production. I need it to kick off my changes, my manifest updates. So what we would do typically as a pattern is I've got my development environment, and that's where I have image updater running. It's going to update that image. But very often I have additional configuration that needs to be changed to support things that are happening in that image. So I can go and make those updates to dev. And when I'm ready, I kick off my promotion, and it's going to pull over the new image with the new values into my new environment and continue its progression from there. And I've just saved myself the manual effort of having to go and update the image, make sure that I have the right, the right SHA or whatever. And then I get the chance to update any additional configuration. So and that's how we mostly use it, and how we see our customers use it. And so for that case, they don't have to use it in production. They're only using it in dev. It goes through part of a pull request update when it goes to the promotion. And so it fits really well into that flow. If I had to point it at production, I've never had an issue with it erroneously updating images. That's not really like the kind of bug that you see. I think if you ever see a bug, it's like, oh, it didn't get that image for some reason. It's usually because I didn't didn't follow the tagging structure in the proper way or whatever. I think I feel pretty safe with Image Updater. Your point about the API changing to get to 1.0 makes perfect sense to me. And using it, especially with a tool like GitOps Cloud from CodeFresh from Octopus Deploy, where you can use those promotion mechanisms afterwards, that works really well. So for those that are watching live, I know we'll have a lot of people join and watch the recording as well. But if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. I mostly see people saying hi and high five and thanks for the platform. So appreciate that. We do have coming up. I don't know if we have a banner for this one, Ravital, but we've got a couple of webinars coming up on all the Argo CD anti-patterns. You can find those at codefresh.io/events. There's a 3-part series where Kostas is going to be doing a webinar talking about all these anti-patterns, going a little bit deeper than what you see in the blog posts. So if you want to ask questions, especially, go join those webinars, and really, really great best practices. And I strongly, strongly advise, you should go through this list no matter what, because if you're doing any of these things, you're going to want to question why you're doing it in that way, because you could be having a better experience with Argo. So yeah, let's see. Ravital, as we're coming to the close here, any last questions that we should ask Jann, you think?
One question I have. For teams that want to start adopting Image Updater, do you have any best practices, recommendations, how to get started?
How to get started? Read the docs, and just hack it away.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Like it's actually, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, you have your image registry at the one site that you need to point Image Updater to. You have your Argo CD application that you need to configure to update images. There is a couple of caveats that people need to be aware of. So it only works if you use Customize or Helm, right? So this is the two things that you need to make Image Updater work. I think another feature request was that we, like plain manifest style of updating. Maybe that will come in the future. I don't know yet. But yeah, it's really simple.
There's also a Slack channel, right?
There is, yeah.
Especially for Image Updater.
There is in the CNCF Slack. If you've got any questions in getting started or have a problem, however complex that problem may be, there's a lot of people on that Slack channel that are happy to help.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Cool.
Amazing.
Go try it out. Image Updater is awesome. Deploy it locally, configure it. It's pretty easy to work with. We actually have it, I think, as part of the GitOps training and certification. I seem to remember that we had that in level 2. I don't know if anybody can confirm that. But if you're not sure, the only way you're going to know is if you go get certified by going to learning.codefresh.io, grab that training and certification, learn all those best practices, get hands-on experience with labs, over 30 labs that our team's created. It's awesome. And Ravital, I'm sorry I stomped on your closeout. Go ahead.
No, feel free. Go ahead.
All right. Well, coming up on Argo Unpacked in future episodes, obviously we try to do these every other week. And our next episode is going to be, what is our next episode on?
With Victor.
Oh, with Victor.
Yes.
All right. What are we talking about?
So we have 2 Victors. One that is working with us, and we'll talk about use cases.
Yeah.
And Victor from Argo CD. And what are we going to talk about?
Oh, yeah. I remember now. Yeah, Victor's been using Argo CD for a long time and has had great success using CodeFresh. He's going to talk, and he's given some talks before at KubeCon and other places. He's going to be talking about his experiences with Argo as an end user, and we're going to talk through some some best practices, some learnings, maybe some war stories as we go through that. So stay tuned for that. If you're not following us, argounpacked.com has the links to all of our social medias. Follow us on X, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on whatever, on Blue Sky. And we'd love to see you at the next one. If you have questions, send them out to us on social media. If you have things you'd like us to cover, let us know, and we'll be sure to try to get those into future episodes. And thank you again, Jann, for joining and talking with us and fixing your green square. You're a very handsome guy. We love to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you folks.
Thanks, Rovital. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.